Okay, this is Thin Duke here. This tutorial is actually going to be kind of cool, I guess, because it's going to be more around philosophy or political theory rather than just the dynamics of this game in particular. And so I've called this little talk here Spying, Judo, and Sun Tzu. So basically, Sun Tzu is the guy who wrote Sun Tzu's Art of War. And this was a military book. I think that was written in the BC era. It's been around for a very long time. But basically, this strategy has been applied many times. In the art of judo, instead of, if someone throws a punch at you, instead of blocking the punch or trying to punch back, instead you grab their arm and then pull them backwards so that you throw them in the direction that their weight is already going. So instead of trying to like be a wall fighting fire with fire, instead you use their motion or direction towards you and you use that to throw them and to hurt them. So basically, Sun Tzu, he understood that the most ineffective way of fighting a war was basically fighting fire with fire, just having this big line of meat just go up against each other and slam into each other. That would kill a lot of people, and that would be very ineffective. And you have to be an idiot if you don't think your life is worth more than just marching into, a line of fire. So what he decided is you need to subvert the society, and you need to make it so your enemy is as unprepared as possible and as clueless and shocked as possible, to the point where they don't know how to make a reasonable response to your action. You see this in many videos or movies where they'll have a ceremonial feast and then it turns out that they poisoned everybody, or they get everybody really drunk like it's this big party, and then when they're really drunk the guys come in and they kill them all. That's pretty much what it is. So basically, to convert this into tribal wars talk, the number one thing you have to do is you got to send spies to each of your potential targets. So in this case, my potential targets would be all these things in red, and also the one that I want to take over right now, which is this guy, Death. I want to take his ass out. So what you got to do is you have to send spies to each of these people. I mean, the most important is to know their units. Send one at a time. But so I'm going to send a unit right there, and then I'm going to send another one on its own, and then I'm going to send a last one to scout the buildings. But here's the thing, is you want to account for not only the base that you're interested in, but also you want to account for, he probably has other bases as well. It's probably that tender one. I don't know. Okay, so he has 2,132 points in total, 2 villages. So his other one is probably Tinder. Is that it? No. Horrific. Is it Mound? Okay, it's this one right here. So what I have to do on this one is I'm going to send spies to this one as well, because if he has a ton of units in this base, then he can use them potentially to participate in the other base if it was attacked. The last thing you need to think about when you're attacking someone like this is, what about their tribe? He has a tiny tribe that doesn't really mean anything, but he might have a friend that's close by. So let's see what's going on. Okay, so these guys are nothing. This guy, he is basically nothing. But let's see who this is. S rocks. I don't know. I mean, so basically, if S rocks 731, if there's a 731 village around here, then potentially that person could join in and fight. But it doesn't look like that's much of a problem. Someone that has a 731 village only is not really going to do anything. So now that I've sent those spies over, by the way, I sent them out of 2 different villages. This village here has 3 spies total, and this one has 2 that are going to the second village. So you got to send the spies, and then you got to get the information. So once you get the information on these, you need to account for what is the possible target. Do I want to take out his main, or do I want to take out his second base? Generally speaking, you're going to want to take out someone's main and not their like island base over on the side. There's a number of reasons for that, because first of all is demoralization. If you take someone's main base, they get very demoralized because typically that's where they've invested most of their time, effort, and that's where most of their production comes from. And that's where they've kind of constructed their approach from the game by building out of that village. So you want to go straight for the main. Don't go for taking other little ones. But so you want to create a force that's big enough to take that out. And once you do take it out, typically they'll rage quit or get very upset because without that part, I mean, they just don't want to play anymore. Yeah, but see, it says scout every base owned by the target. I just did that. Okay, so typically speaking, I mean, I only have 2 bases, so I only have 5 spies. But later on in the game, you're going to have a lot more bases and a lot more spies. So all those guys down there, I could have spied them all too. So you basically got to examine each potential target, and you got to create a visualization of the possible reactions these guys could have. Like, do they have a lot of swordsmen? Do they have a lot of archers? Do they have very few spearmen? What exactly? So if they don't have any spearmen, then you should attack with light cavalry. If they don't have any swordsmen, then you should attack with axe fighters. If they don't have any archers, you should get a lot of mounted archers. Okay, so you got to figure that out. And here is the attack or the execution. You got to send a massive attack to one core piece of infrastructure. This is the one that you want to take out. And typically, you want to take out their main first. You just go straight to the top of the pyramid, and you take that piece out. Because once that is gone, everything else will crumble. Then, once you want to send this massive attack wave, I've done a guide on nobling before if you want to see that. That will explain it pretty well. But then you want to send fake waves to all of the other bases and all of their allies' bases if they have allies that are nearby. So these fake waves will consist of rams or trebuchets are great for later game, or catapults, or just a single spearman or something. But typically, what you want to do is you want to confuse them to think that these waves are containing nobles. So, or, you know, that they're going to get hit with a big attack wave at their other base. So this confusion makes it so they don't know what decision to make. They don't know, hey, should I send a support wave to these guys or this guy? Because this situation, I don't know. I have one ram coming at me, but I don't know if this is an army and I could get screwed up. So you gotta send one catapult, ram, or trebuchet, maybe a few waves of them to each of these bases to feign and create this illusion that they're being attacked by nobles. The deceiver unit is also very good for this. So you create confusion. Every base is potentially under attack, so they don't know how to respond. They're like, what's going on? I don't know. Okay, and then lastly, you stabilize the newly gained property, and then you neutralize the threat. So this actually has another way of playing out. I'll show you in a moment. But once you take over this base, it's going to be very unstable, demoralized. Your loyalty is going to be very low, so it's going to be very easy to lose at that point. So what you want to do is send support waves, and it's called normalization. You want to normalize things. No longer chaotic, no longer a battleground. You have to normalize the situation now that you've taken over. And you want to neutralize. For example, if you just took it from this player, if I just took this guy's, if I took this guy's base from him, to neutralize the threat at that point, you would basically just need to kill all the units in here, because if you're occupying this, but then he has a bunch of units in here that could potentially attack you, or if he has allies nearby that could potentially attack you, then you don't necessarily need to noble it, but you want to kill all the units and demoralize him, or at least have enough defending your base so that the threat is no longer really a problem. So if you want to see the step-by-step demoralization, the demoralization, I think, is most potent when you take over someone's main base. Because if you take over the main base, they're going to be demoralized and they're really not going to want to play anymore. Then the destabilization, I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with the demoralization. But basically, now he not only is he pissed off that he lost his main, but the structure or the way things used to work, they don't work anymore. They're destabilized. Then the savior. This is by the way, this is out of actual, like, I guess, communist terminology. But the savior in this case, it's actually just you taking over the noble. You have the crisis, which is the nuke, and then the normalization is when you take over and restart things. So really, Tribal Wars is basically more or less kind of how real life political takeovers work. And so to recap on some things, is you don't want to fight fire with fire. You want to be, as Bruce Lee says, you want to be like water. That is, you want to be formless, shapeless, hard to predict. If someone tries to grab you in their hand, you basically just slide out of their fingers. Like water, you can't get a hold of it. So basically, you never want to go head on with your enemies. You want to do something that puts you in a position to come out ahead in terms of your exchanges of units. You don't want to lose an equal amount of units. You want to create a condition or accept a challenge in which you are going to have the upper hand. So you never want to make fair trades, and you never want to stop your enemy when they're making a mistake. Lots of times they will get entangled in all these other fights. They're fighting with someone else, and then they're losing all these units with that person. Well, guess what? Then you can just swipe in the middle of their battle and take their stuff because they've already wasted all their units attacking someone else. And so whenever they're making a mistake, encourage them. So yeah, keep doing it. Keep attacking them. Yeah, you do that. And then you swoop in. You don't want to stop them. I mean, just tell them, keep doing that mistake. And also the last thing is, do not channel a threat, your threat. This is another reason why you want to encourage them to make mistakes rather than try to correct them, because you don't want to challenge or you don't want to create the perception of yourself that you are a threatening or potentially dangerous, someone that's going to noble them at any moment. You want to create the illusion that you are basically incompetent, that you're not a threat at all, that you're just a spectator, that you're not really part of the picture. So you want to try to keep that illusion going as long as possible until like the couple hours that you decide to take over them, because they should think that you're a non-threatening, nice little guy who couldn't do a thing until the moment before they get nobled, and then they realize that, maybe I miscalculated. Maybe that was part of his plan all along. So those are some ideas. I guess they can, I go back to Sun Tzu's Art of War, but they're also pretty standard in terms of Marxist ideology, how the Chinese have adopted more or less this communistic ideology. You see this kind of in Russia. There's a lot of Jewish people who employ this ideology with Kabbalah and stuff like that. But you need to think about the aspect of using the weight and force of your opponent's energy against them, so that you're taking their energy and using that to destroy them. rather than taking them head on. So just a thing to think about.